welcome back. I've got Jonathan Sheppard on the line. John, how are you?
How are you? How's it going, Michael?
I am awesome. Really looking forward to this conversation because, as we talked about a bit in the pre-show and our conversation we had earlier, this is some important work that you're doing, and it's bringing awareness to an issue that I think every organization is facing. So, why don't you share a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into this important conversation.
Sure. I live in the recruiting space. I'm the president and CEO of Sheppard Associates, a full-service attorney search firm in New York City, and I own a support staff company called Daybreak Staffing. And our perch is mid and large-size law firms. Kind of built my entire career in that space. Started recruiting when I was 19, and had kind of seen a lot. But about 5 years ago, I started to notice that generationally, everybody was kind of pulling apart. And I've always recruited from the space of like, get the biggest, best group of people together. And what I kind of stumbled on was this conversation about the generationality of work. 4 generations working together for the first time in American business. And everybody has a different need set, as I refer to it. And everybody is generationally judgmental. You know, I joke with candidates like this pops up on screen and the cartoon bubble pops up and says old guy. But then you get to talking to me and you realize I have this generational lens to what I do. And you're like, where'd you come from? People your age don't talk like you. And I found it to be really, really interesting. So I started weaving it into my recruiting. And the more I did, I found that there was an appetite for it. I found that it was a message that was resonating. I contend if you have boomers with vision, Gen Xers with ability, or high revenue producing people, 42 to 58, if you have millennials with potential and Gen Zers with drive, then you have the best of all 4 generations. And no matter what business you're running, you owe it to yourself to get the best people in the right spots. So it's been a really interesting ride. And I'm having conversations with people closer to my age, right down to people just coming out of law school. And they all have something to add to the conversation. So when you and I connected, I was like, this is a great platform for me to talk about this with you, you know, you being in the corporate burnout space, you know, and trying to get people to kind of not get burnt out, or what to do and recover from getting burnt out. I think it really does tie in very much.
Oh, I agree. And as we discussed before, you work in the law space, but this is applicable in every industry, and everyone having a voice and input based on their observations, because they're going to see things differently than other people. And it reminds me of a conversation I had several years ago with Maestro Roger Nierenberg, who, is a conductor, conducted in New York and Philly and other places. And he's a leadership consultant now. And one of the things he does is he goes to organizations and he brings a small orchestra with him. And what he does is he sets up an orchestra pit wherever they happen to be. And then, of course, he goes up on the podium and they first start to practice, and they kind of sound like a second grade band at the beginning, no rhythm whatsoever. And then they start harmonizing and everything sounds amazing. And they have the employees of the organization in management sitting in with the pit. So they're hearing that music. And then what he does is he brings up people either one by one or in small groups up to his podium, and he has the musicians play the same notes, the same music again. And everyone is absolutely blown away on how completely different it sounds from that vantage point. And he said, that's the thing. From my vantage point as a leader, or my vantage point as a baby boomer, or I'm a Gen X, or a millennial, or a Gen Z, or Gen Alpha's coming, we all see things differently. And the thing is to focus on that. What are you seeing from your perspective is an opportunity to see things in a different light, or maybe a different way, that could be completely a game changer for your organization as far as teamwork, interaction, your deliverables, you name it.
Yeah, 100%. You use the analogy of an orchestra. The piece of music the orchestra is playing is the end game. It's finite. How you get to playing that music is infinite. And that's really the thing now in the work life of America. People are redefining things like shifting expectations in the workplace. What does productivity look like? What does engagement look like? And all of those things. And they're all seen through a different lens. And what I've been trying to tell people is if you communicate effectively and you respect the opinions of everyone, their view of looking at the musical piece, then you're going to bring things to the table to make your business stronger. Just like the playing of the notes is one thing, but really the fulfillment of the piece of music is really the bigger thing. And that's what I'm finding now in corporate America. And, my perch again, it's the law firm space. So there is a hierarchy there in law firms between partners and associates. But at the end of the day, you can learn a lot from everyone. And if you're open to that, you're not going to take every policy and everything like that from somebody who's only been in the workplace 2 or 3 years, but you may take a piece of that policy and apply it and win over the entire workforce. And I think that is now post-pandemic where firms find themselves and they don't really know the way forward. Why? Because you have 2.5 generations or 2.25 generations on the younger side who are basically saying, yeah, I know we're a successful firm. I know we've been around a long time. Everybody's made a lot of money, the boomers and the older Gen Xers, but we don't want to do it that way. We want to have a different experience. We want to do interesting work with good people at a fair wage at a company or a firm that we believe in. And then we want to go home and we want to have a life. And we don't want to be defined by what we did for a living, unlike the baby boomer generation, who was very much defined by their occupation. And now the push-pull of that is that there are other options out there for people in the workplace because there are progressive companies out there that are embracing everyone and not saying, well, we did it this way. I mean, you and I are old enough to have parents that said, wait till you have kids, right? And, and at the end of the day, it's really now about the kids telling the old uns what to do. So it's a really interesting time in that regard as well, because it's a time of opportunity, like you said.
Yeah, agreed. And it was a post, I don't know if it was a podcast interview I did or an article where, coming from a Gen X standpoint, it was basically an olive branch to millennials and Gen Z and to the baby boomers as well. It's like, look, we all have gifts to bring to the table that's going to make this world better. Let us all figure those things out together, share our experiences, and it makes such a big difference. And, I think back early in my career, I originally was in public accounting. So I worked for a CPA firm, similar kind of hierarchy situation to legal, where you've got your partners and you've got your associates. And, I would learn from everybody from the senior most partner that had probably 40 years on me to a recent partner who was maybe 10 or 15 years older than me. So that was, I'd pick their brains on different things and get their perspectives, learn about their personalities, what made them motivated, why they looked at things a certain way, and just, borrowed some, work styles from everybody and tried it out. And I think the more open-minded all of us can be when it comes to learning how to do things and shifting away from this, I'm going to put in the 80-hour weeks every week and then this is who I am. Hi, I am Mike Levitt and I am this. Well, I don't identify myself as necessarily a burnout consultant or a coach or a podcaster. And it really depends on my conversation. This is some of the things that I do, but that's not me. Other generations, as you said, they, identified themselves with who they were in a workplace, which I think is, one of the, I don't want to call it sad, but it is kind of sad in a way, is when the baby boomers have started to retire, it's an identity crisis for some. And I've had conversations with them. They're like, I don't know who I am. I'm like, you're Bob. That's who
Yeah,
you
yeah.
are.
And it's very limiting, right? Why would you want to be one-dimensional, right? Why would you're a father, you're an uncle, you're a brother, you're a softball player on the weekends, you're any of those things. But what I find is that people are so in their comfort zone and so so unaware and maybe even a little afraid to just try to come out of that zone a little bit to extend themselves. The firms that I do business with in the mid and large size space, The ones that are trying to find the way forward are the firms that lateral partners and associates want to go to. They may be stumbling with a policy or an initiative, but they're out there trying. And it's the firms that are out there trying because they're going to listen to people a little bit more of all generations. And it's not really a commercial for, oh, you have to get with the times and, you know, the younger generations are coming up and everything like that. It's not about that. It's about you're running a business. And if you needed a better computer system, for example, you can go out and buy it. If you needed higher caliber performers in your business, you should owe it to yourself to find them, regardless of where they are in their career. I did a roundtable of managing partners last summer, a breakfast question Q&A, and one of the managing partners stood up and he said, John, let's cut through all the BS about recruiting and people and all this. What are the top 2 things you look for when you look for people for law firms? And I said, that's easy. Number 1, subject matter expertise. They got to know what they're doing, no matter where they are in their career. And that's true in the law firm space and outside the law firm space. Number 2, good human being. Because if they're good human beings with subject matter expertise, you're a smart guy, you're running a law firm, you should be able to use those people most effectively. And he said to me, you know, those are kind of words to live by, but hard to put into practice. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I can see where he was coming from, and I think about, you know, my experiences in hiring when I worked in healthcare and hiring, you know, people that may, excluding clinicians, again, they have to be a subject matter expert. They have to have their licenses. They're going to be working with needles and medicine and things like that. You want them licensed, please. But as far as clerical administration side of things, you know, I looked for, are they trainable and coachable? Are they good with people? Are they a good person? Will they be able to withstand the variety of demands coming from a variety of different personalities? Factoring into that, one, you're going to have some grumpy physicians. They exist. You're also going to have some really grumpy patients, because typically when people are going to the doctor's office, they're not well. They're not feeling good. So they may not be putting their best foot forward when they're interacting with people because they just don't feel good.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to navigate through all of that, do your best not to take it personally, understand the big picture of all of it, and give the best customer service, quite frankly, as you can to all the stakeholders involved.
Yeah.
And I remember hiring, and I've shared this story before, I hired a receptionist for one of my clinics, and she didn't have any healthcare experience, but she worked for one of the major cell phone companies in their retail department. And the doctors, the board, everybody's asking me, are you out of your mind? They don't have any healthcare experience. And I said, neither did I when I started this organization, and now I'm running yours. So who's the idiot now? And
Yeah.
you know, so basically they went, okay. Said she's trainable. She's going to pick it up quick. Number 2, she's great with people. So long story short, she is now running a clinic herself, a healthcare clinic, when she started in a cell phone company, and now she's running a clinic. Why? Because we gave her the opportunity. We created the environment where she could thrive. She did. She took advantage of it and made it, you know, her career.
Yeah.
And that was an opportunity I gave because I saw the person. I'm like, you can train people on things, you know, that's not a problem. It's like, how are they with people in all these different aspects of things that get thrown at us on a daily basis?
And
And
it's a
that's
fine line to walk. You know, it
very
is a
much so.
fine line to walk, you know, and one of the biggest complaints I hear from younger workers across all industries is there's nobody there to coach and train me up. And, you know, you and I had the conversation when we spoke at first about my stepson is a mechanical engineering guy. He's 29. And he was working for his first job out of school. And he said, they just kind of threw me into a job that I'm not qualified for, you know, and I'm like managing a $2 million budget. And I asked him, like, is this correct? Like, you just need to show it to me once. And they were like, well, kind of figure it out. And I told them, I hear the same complaints from young attorneys. whose law firms want them to come sit in the office 5 days a week, but the partners that they're reporting to aren't there. And more, as we've bled from the millennial generation to the Gen Z generation, younger people want to be in the office with mentors, with trainers, so they can have the opportunity that receptionist had, right? Maybe they're not all the way there in their education and experience so far. But if you can start with that and then get them to where you need them to be, then you're ahead of the game. Now, people that are clinicians or technicians, it's a different story. Just like in certain law firms, it's practice area expertise. But if some young associate comes along and has that practice area expertise, why wouldn't you want the one that wants to come in and get instruction from you, as opposed to the one that you think is sitting in their living room, in their sweatpants, thumbing their nose at you, and only working when they want, not when you want, if you're a partner in a law firm? The reality is that if you embrace that younger employee that wants to come in and get there yourself, you'll be able to have a better team over time. And that's some of the conversation that I'm having with my law firm clients now. It's like, the problem is not your associates. The problem is the partners, because they want to sit in the Hamptons or Martha's Vineyard or the Jersey Shore 3 days a week, all year long, or mostly in the summer. And they're like, well, I get everything done. Well, you need to come in and recommit to the firm that you're going to bring the next generation of attorneys along, just like you were brought along at one point in time. The way in which that occurs is now different because of the way the generations communicate. The boomers a little more in person and through email. The younger Gen Xers, millennials, and Gen Zers more via instant message or text, or something like that. If you're a boomer, you just have to make the effort with the Gen Xer or the millennial or the Gen Zer to communicate the way they want, and then they'll eventually come to you too. It's not you acquiescing everything to train up good people. But if you train up good people, you'll get a better team together, and you run a better business, you'll be more successful, and guess what? You'll make more money.
Yeah, and it's just utilizing all the tools at the time that makes sense for everybody involved. Because sometimes a quick text message works. Sometimes it's okay, let's jump on a quick Teams or Zoom call. That's great. Sometimes it's like, you know what, why don't we carve out some time and we'll spend an hour in the office and we're going to go over this. And you're not distracted by anything else because you're in a room, doors closed, you're flushing it all out and all of that, and you get to have the human interaction and read body language and all of that. There's all these things that are available, and we should utilize all of them. And that
100%.
goes to all generations. Doesn't
And
matter.
every business. It's in every business. There's no substitute for, hey kid, come sit in my office with me, listen in on this call, and then we'll talk about it.
Mhm. Yeah,
There's no substitute for that FaceTime. Now we live in a work time where that specific type of event is less frequent and shorter in duration. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't be part of it. And that's what the workforce is having issue with at the moment. I hear the same complaints from my mechanical engineering stepson as I do from young attorneys, as I do from young people in trades who are doing things like, electrician work or carpentry. It is a universal issue cutting across 4 generations. And those people, I was preparing some notes, for this podcast. And, one of the things I made a note here is navigating the landscape, right? Everybody's like, how do I do it? Well, you have to read, and you have to get good at reading the 3 generations that you're not a part of. Because then if you extend yourself into those generations, you'll get better feedback, more open communication. And I use the example of I heard the phrase boots the house down. And it's very much a phrase that came out of the LGBTQ community and the drag community. And it meant when a drag performer had a great performance that they brought the house down, boots the house down. I threw it at my daughter-in-law, who's 28, very much the Instagram generation. And she looked at me wide-eyed and said, how do you know that phrase? And they said, because I can read. I was online, I was reading an article and stuff like that. And she said to me, slay. So I ended up, and like we all know what that means, right? You killed it. So I ended up doing a video on Instagram and LinkedIn about those 2 phrases and how the thought hit me of, if you're a lateral partner in a law firm and you're mid-career or beyond, and sometimes you can connect with a younger associate just through the use of a silly phrase or an exchange about current events or something like that to just break down that wall. That's all you're looking to do. And it's amazing to me that more people don't think that way. But I think that those who do are going to be lined up for the biggest success going forward.
Yeah, it humanizes people and
Right.
it breaks down those silos. And, for those that are a little reluctant to do it, you kind of have to ask yourself, okay, why is my ego fighting this? What's bringing this about? Because if I want to make a comment about Taylor Swift's new album, okay, you read up a little bit. It's not like the information isn't available, but again, it's in the context of the work you're doing. It adds that human element to it, and they go, oh, wait a minute, old man Bob isn't as non-hip as we thought. He's like, wow, he's slaying it today, and it just on a call or something like that, and you're just like, oh, okay. Yeah, and I think back even in the early days of my career when I talked about earlier about just kind of observing people and the way they approach things, and it made such a huge difference in my life both ways. Because there were people obviously younger than me that were working that I was observing and going, okay, what's motivating you? And especially when I hired people after they'd been there a while, I'll ask them, and sometimes they had to check because I tend to be sarcastic sometimes. I say, why do you work here? And I had to frame it and use a tone that it sounded like I was curious and not
Mhm.
being sarcastic. And why, you have so many options, why do you choose to work here? What about this place? And often, they would blow sunshine up my backside and tell me it was me and all that, which was nice to hear, but I knew there was other elements too. But eh, for me, it was like, okay, I'm creating an environment where people want to be here and they can thrive and shine and do things and interact with each other and grow. And when you have
100%.
that, you navigate through all these stressors, you navigate through all the ups and downs, you navigate through pandemics, you navigate through all the challenges that the world throws at us because you've got each other's backs,
Yeah,
and
and
it
you're in
makes a
the
big
right kind
difference.
of environment. I started my businesses in 2000 and people were like, oh, you can do so well and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm not really driven by money. I said, I'm driven by experience. I'm driven by controlling my own destiny. I created a workplace that I wanted to be in. And then I tried to fill it with people that thought like I did in that regard, where people are treated with courtesy and respect. Different opinions are encouraged and not thrown to the wayside. They're discussed. And I've told many an employee of all ages about why something was a great idea or something was not a great idea. And the fact that we addressed it is what they appreciated. You create that kind of environment. And now I tell my candidates, and it doesn't matter if it's a lateral partner with a multi-million-dollar book of business or down through the ranks, we now live in a time where you get to decide a little bit, more so than the market. If you have a book of business and you're a lateral partner and you're mid-career and you're missing your kids growing up and you want to change that, you can make a move. If you're a younger associate who's not getting the kind of training and mentoring you want, you can make a move. You owe to yourself, and you talk about including people in the workplace and like, why do you like working here? And questions like that. It's really about giving people a stake in things. It's giving them a say. I was sharing a success story of a law firm that I work with who created a spot on the management committee to give associates and what they call income partners a voice on the management committee. And it's not really done all that much. And the people appreciated it. And it's made the people at the firm grow closer. It's about the culture. I had saw an interview with something called the Real Race Project, and part of the exercise was, define yourself in 6 words. You should always be able to define yourself in 6 words instead of 6 degrees of separation. And mine is interested in people different than me. And you can't be ashamed of admitting who you are, to people when whether they're the same as you or different than you. I'm like, I lived in New York City my entire adult life. And when I would get in the back of a cab, I would ask the cab driver how to pronounce their first name. because it showed that I was interested in them. And they were generally somebody who was a different ethnic group than me. And all of a sudden, the pasty middle-aged white guy that got into the back of their cab made them feel good. And that's the type of stuff that in the workplace doesn't cost you any money if you're running a business. All it requires you to do is change your mind. And if you are bringing in people at all levels, if you're a senior partner that I'm working with and you're only interested in a money jump, it's probably not going to be a successful engagement. If you're a senior partner I'm working with that wants the right firm, doing the right work and making money, then I definitely can help you. And it's really interesting to see how people are now redefining themselves, redefining their lives. And, for my purposes, it's an ongoing conversation. It requires two things, and it's very simple: communication and accountability. And that includes self-accountability. I talk to younger people, I'm like, you spent all this money on law school, and you're sitting in your living room in your sweatpants, and you think you have it great, and you're making X dollars working in big law, but here's what's happening. You're being given the same work over and over. You're getting siloed. You're not really learning a lot. The person that's in the office that is at the elevator that the partner grabs is the person that's now in line ahead of you to go to clients. When those clients start talking with that individual, you become less and less valuable. On the flip side, if you're a partner with a book of business, you need to be in to lead, to service your clients, and to interact with others in the firm. And if you do those things, you'll make more money in the long run. You'll get easier engagement. And what I mean by easier engagement is your people getting to you in the time frame you want, communication and accountability, but it's got to also be self-accountability. I wanted to tell about the road ahead a little bit, and I say this is an ongoing conversation. And a little funny anecdote happened to me a couple of months ago. My wife and I had our master bathroom redone, and the contractor had subcontractors, and one of them was the plumber, and the base of the toilet leaked when they finished the bathroom. So the plumber came back, and he's like, I tell these kids, like, don't just put the silicone on the base. You have to take your finger and put it around to create the seal. And they don't listen, they don't listen, they don't listen. I'm like, how old are you? He goes, 28. I'm like, and you're complaining about the 19-year-old? And he goes, you betcha. And that, Michael, made me realize that the generational conversation with Gen Alpha coming, it's not changing. It's not going away. And the people that can navigate the conversation the best to run businesses, because that's what everybody's trying to do, are going to be the most profitable in the long run, are going to feel better in the long run about the businesses they've created, and their people are going to end up staying with them because they feel like they're a part of something.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And it reminds me real quick of a story. A colleague of mine does some after school robotics coaching and some coding types of stuff. And some of their students are either from first grade all the way up to 12th grade. And this little first grader, he was working with them on coding and designing a little computerized game kind of thing. And at the end of it, this little kid, was leaving, and the coach was working with another student. So this 5-year-old pats the coach on the back a couple of times, says, "Good job today." And he leaves, and he's laughing about it because here's this little 5-year-old that just gave me this attaboy type of thing. He's like, he's 5, how in the world is he doing that? It's like, yeah, he might be 5, but he's, in his late 50s in real life or something. I'm not sure which.
Make that kid the CEO.
You got it. I looked, I heard that story. I said, okay. I said, all right,
That's great.
keep an eye on that one, because they're going to do amazing things in this world. And that's what it's all about, whether it's a law firm, accounting firm, education, whatever. Create that environment where everybody can thrive in the way that they define thriving, to serve your clientele, your customers, whomever. And it's when the magic happens. You light up. You're like, it's Sunday and you're dying to get in the office because you want to see that partner or that associate that you're mentoring, because they crushed it last week, and you want to congratulate them in person for really stepping up, because people want to learn. You know, there
Yeah.
most people are coachable, and the self accountability. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that's something that I see as absent, but there's reasons why it's absent. You know, the more accountable you are to yourself and what's your role in this game, the better you're going to be short term and long term.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. You know, that's a whole nother podcast, you know, that the accountability and self-accountability thing. And, you know, we talk about it through the lens, you know, of the generations. We talk about it running better businesses and everything like that. But these are human skills. These are skills that help you in every walk of life. You know, and I think that's the thing that's lost on a lot of people. You know, you say, you know, you crushed it last week, you know, you're fired up to go into the office on Monday. But we also live in the real world that you're not going to feel that way all the time. Right. And a lot of people talk to people like us and they're like, oh, you know, it's easy to be gung ho and rah rah and all that. That's not what this is about. What this is about is positioning yourself. And if you're running a business, positioning your business the best way possible, but being realistic about it. And wouldn't you rather go to work fired up more times than not? I mean, I would settle for that if I were in the corporate space. I think I said to you on our initial call. You know, I work for myself. I'm very much, you know, doing my thing and everything. And I always joke with people, my boss sucks. He just makes me work when other people don't, you know, but he also does approve my expenses, you know, and he does let me go do some fun things. But what he does is he lets me be me. And, you know, I'm fortunate that I work for myself, and not everybody lives in that world, especially if you're in corporate America, whether it's a law firm or another kind of business. We get that. But you could set yourself up to be as close to what you want. And that is occurring for the first time in 2 generations. It really is. People in the 50s really had the kind of opportunity that the generations coming up have now. Everybody from there to now, a lot of the boomer generation, and I hear it all the time, the boomers are hanging on too long. But the boomers who consider themselves, as I consider myself, and I'm sure you know, even though you're a little younger than me, you consider yourself this kind of person, is we're empowerers. We want to tell people, listen, you bring a lot to the table. And I do it with people that are way older than me down to way younger than me. And, you know, I've had more than one candidate at each end of the age range say, boy, you get me. And I said, I'm not trying to be you. Again, it's communication and accountability. If you keep that in mind, and then courtesy and respect yourself, but respect others, you know, be humble, you know, extend yourself a little bit. You'd be surprised, you know, how people react to you, like the guy driving that cab in New York City.
Yeah, it's important. And I tell you, if everybody followed that, boy, the world would look a lot different and workplaces would be a lot better. So, John, I've loved this conversation. I could talk to you for hours on this. You know that already. So, where can people find out more about you and all this amazing work?
Well, you could certainly reach out to me individually at J Sheppard, spelled JSHEPPARD, at jsheppardassociates.com. You can go to our website. You can find us on Instagram and on LinkedIn at J Sheppard Associates. And you know, I really want to thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today, Mike. I could talk to you for hours as well, and I'm sure we'll be talking offline again.
Of course. And I'll definitely have that information in the show notes. So, John, thank you for being you and making this world a much better place. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much, Michael. Have a great day.